My name is Mo, I produce metal, and today I am going to recreate Mr. God by Periphery using only MIDI instruments. In this video I am going to be recreating Mr. God by Periphery, but I am also then going to recreate Prayer Precision and Icarus Lives using this newer album kind of sound. And let's start by showing the main character of this video, which is the new Behemoth Bass by Solemn Tones. In Behemoth Bass you have a sampled custom Dingwall ABZ bass guitar, which according to Solemn Tones themselves has slightly less of this clanky top end to make it smoother and a bit easier to fit in the mix. And going over the features, you have a DI signal, plenty of attack, so you have both using pick and fingerstyle. For this modern metal sound, you definitely want the attack of a pick, in my opinion. You have some different tone options here. You have the glass using some kind of dark glass pedal, I assume. The grid signal. And classic. For this tutorial, I'm gonna keep using the DI. Here is a great feature, which you also have in Odin Guitar, which is the humanize feature. So it will slightly randomize the velocities to make it sound slightly more human and less like a robot. I usually keep it around 10%, and then I also customize the velocity in the MIDI. Going over here, you can add some noises to the signal. You can have an equalizer on the DI signal. Here on this page, you can add a sub-synth, you can do automatic sliding, you can change the tuning of the bass. It's a lot of customization, which I love. And here you see that you can route the different parts of the signal to different channels. So I have here one that is going from 0 up to 175 Hertz. And then I have one band going from 175 to 4.5K and then 4.5K and above. And what is good about this is that you can then process each part of the signal individually. So for instance, here I have the sub signal of the bass. Here I have the mid signal of the bass. And the high signal of the bass. I have an affiliate link to Solemn Tones below where you can pick up both Behemoth Bass and Odin Free, which will be featured later in the video. If you do so using my link, you help support the channel and help me be able to make more of these videos going forward. So now let's jump into the mixing of the bass, and for that I'm gonna use the Icarus Lives over here. And starting with the sub layer. The first thing that I do is R-bass to add some information around 50 Hertz. Just making it so much fatter. Next I have a compressor, just making it very even. To remove all of the pick attack peaks, I really wanted super level for the bass. I'm using flatline here in hybrid mode. And just finally a EQ, which is cutting at exactly 175 Hertz, just like in the bass, because I have now introduced a bit of clipping and a bit of noise over this area. So you see all of this information is being removed. And the mid layer is where most of the distortion is coming from, and for that I am using parallax. And before parallax I have just some compression And I also have an EQ, which is boosting certain parts of the signal into parallax here. So you can hear if I disable this EQ, it will alter the distortion characteristic slightly. A little bit more muddy. More focused. Next, just some SSL style EQ. I am just adding a little bit of this lower mid frequency here. Soothe to smoothen out some resonances. And finally, this EQ further boosting some areas and doing some small cuts. Now, I think you could keep the bass sound just using the sub layer and the main distortion layer, but what is good about this Behemoth Bass is that you can gain access to the high layer separately, making it possible to add a bit of this string attack here. So I am just doing very subtle processing using this Nembrini Audio Black Ice. Honestly, you can use any distortion plugin for this part since it's not heavily distorted at all. And then I am doing flatline for the peaks, and I am doing soothe. And the final is just this EQ, removing some of the really annoying parts of the signal up here. And if you listen now to the combined signal, here's where we are at. And if I now increase the highs, you hear where it's doing. For this particular tone, I don't want the highs present barely at all. Now for the bus, which I am then routing all these layers into, I have first some tape saturation here, making it slightly fatter. Mainly adding some like information around 100 Hertz or so. Bass mint, my usual classic, just removing a bit of muddiness. Next we have a bomber and some distressor, which is just compressing the bass, and it also has a pretty slow attack, meaning it will let the initial hit through but then compress. So after pauses in the bass playing, it will have an exaggerated attack. Pro MB just pinning it. I have then a flatline layer on the bus, just really keeping it super level. Not doing a whole ton at all. Soothe on the bus as well. Next I have a plugin which I have grown to love for especially bass and vocals, which is Bloom by Oak Sound, and it's like kind of like golf fuzz. It's shaping the signal very dynamically. And here I am boosting a little bit of the 135 Hertz, removing some mud here around 300 Hertz, and it's just keeping like a similar EQ curve no matter which note is playing, which is great. And just the final EQ looks like this. So now I will play you the final comparison between my MIDI track and the original track. So now let's jump into how I processed Odin 3 for the rhythm guitar tones for these tracks. Okay, cool. Let's start with the main amp, and for that I am using Fall Amp. With these settings I am going through an exported IR using Contenders Round 1 from GGD by my good friend Francesco, and I am using these cabs here. So you hear it sounding very clanky, a bit too high-pitched, I think. And to add some meat to this signal, I am gonna be using the Gojira amp here for this nice octaver sound. I am also doing some parallel processing using the tone suite Distant here, which has this destructor pedal enabled. And if I increase the mix of this, you will hear what it's doing. But I have it just as 30%. Before all of this, I have Soothe just removing a little bit of a ringy sound here. I also have this EQ before the amp, which is removing some mids and carving some low end, and mainly it's just removing this top end from the DI. Let's move on. I also have Basement on the guitar doing the same thing as on the bass, and Soothe doing the same thing as on the bass, making it slightly cleaner. And same thing as on the bass. I have Bomber and Distressor here compressing, just keeping it slightly more level. Next, some SSL EQ, just boosting some top end here, it looks like. I'm also cutting here around 1.5K, and I am boosting around 140 Hertz or so. I have Pro MB just clanking down on the palm mutes to not get the low end being unruly there. And here is the EQ I came up with. The Periphery tone in Mr. God has a lot of this 800 sound in it, which is making the guitar super vocal sounding. It gets a lot of definition from that. So yeah, it's funny to do something that I maybe normally wouldn't add, but you know, coming to the realization, it actually sounds really, really good. And for the preview track here, we have Prayer Position, which is one of my favorite Periphery riffs of all time. And for this track, I have just backed off slightly on the octaver. So before it was here, and now it's here, to make the tone a slightly more defined here. But it still has almost the same tone as in Mr. God, because what I wanted to see is how does the modern Periphery sound on the older stuff. I find that really interesting. Without further ado, check out my MIDI version of a Prayer Position compared to the original. For the final track, I decided to midify its Icarus Lives, because yeah, this is my favorite riff by Periphery of all time, so I really wanted to do it in this mixing style. And I'm not gonna go over the mixing I did for every single kit piece. I have several drum tutorials, the latest one you can find here, but I'm gonna go over the different drums I used. So the main tone is coming from P5, where I am using the low-tuned Matt Halpern signature snare. This is the same snare that I believe they used on the Mr. God drum recording, so yeah, it sounds close to the original. It even has the same tuning, I believe, as the original snare. And then I just have these cymbals from the P5 kit going on. Oh, the home drums, I am just using the medium tuned snare, but I am also tuning it slightly up here to perfectly match the tuning of the Matt Halpern snare from P5. When you're blending different library drums, it's important that you match the tuning of the snares to make them sound cohesive. And I am also using auto align to make sure the phase is perfect between them. Pretty low in the mix, I would say. One Kit Wonder Metal, the main kick sound. I've used this kick for years. It's the only kick I really love to use, and it sounds so snappy, but it has so much weight as well. It's the perfect kick sound in my opinion. One Kit Wonder Brutal, just using the snare, also using the tune feature here in Contact. By quite a lot I'm tuning it down, and it's mainly this percussive, really snappy attack sound that I'm after. also super low in the mix. I am then using P4. I have the VCast bronze snare, and then I have these toms here. And finally we have the original Modern Massive, which is just using the China, as well as the Vinnie Paul snare room sound here. And together it sounds like this. Okay, here is my MIDI version of Icarus Lives, and if you're new to my channel, then we have a rule here. If you headbang during this final riff, you need to subscribe and you need to like the video. Enjoy.